Hi, everyone. Welcome back. This is Mr. Mag with his friend, special guest, Josué.
Hey
Josué,
guys,
how do you like people to refer to you before I call you Josué the entire
Josué's fine. I
time? Okay.
don't, I don't
Okay.
mind. Yeah, that's cool.
Cool. So, first question out of the way. How are you doing? Like with all the COVID stuff?
I'm all right. It's definitely stressful, especially for musicians.
Mm,
So I work mainly freelance. I have a lot of teaching gigs, performance gigs, and composition gigs.
yeah.
Outside of that, I do a lot of research stuff like that. So, a lot of this stuff has like large meetings. We're supposed to have like a large meeting over in Chicago, and
Mm,
all this other different stuff, and um a lot of that stuff's obviously been canceled. Some stuff's been rescheduled online. So,
yeah.
just busy, hectic, trying to find the motivation and the how would I say it? Kind of like the motivation and just like the ideas to work with something, because a lot of jobs in terms of music or opportunities have just been canceled because
Mm,
uh, a lot of people see music as something that's not absolutely essential, which when it comes to like food and all that stuff, obviously, food, shelter, all that stuff comes first, but music's always one of the last things to recover after stuff
right.
like this. Yeah.
Yeah. It's I mean it's been pretty hard for everyone that I've talked to and myself included. It's just like everything just suddenly stopped.
Yeah,
Uh,
definitely. And I mean, especially with Zoom, I mean, I'm sure you know the deal with like your class and stuff. Like a lot of my
mm,
private students and classes have been through Zoom, and I imagine as a student it's stressful because I'm also on the student side,
yeah.
learning, so it's hard keeping track of everything online versus in person. And as a teacher, it's also hard keeping track of all your students, not having that personal time in class to like connect with them directly and
Right.
make sure that everyone's doing okay, and making sure that they're succeeding to the best of your ability.
Yeah. It's been a challenge on the teacher side, and I'm about to experience it on the student side because I'm gonna start my master's over the summer.
Okay.
Uh, so it's just been like wild. At least for me, it's just like the amount of emails I have to keep track of, and like how many kids are actually turning this stuff in, and
Hmm.
then our school, they're asking for like a month's worth of lesson plans and stuff like ahead
Yikes.
because they
Oh
want to
my
know that we have them and stuff, and we
god.
have to like do that. And it's like, well, that's not really like right now. I'm just pulling stuff that I'm like, okay, this would be technically useful to a music student, but like they're not gonna like doing this.
Yeah,
uh
yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's been a struggle.
Yeah, I mean, the hard thing about music too is that part of it is solo, but a lot of it is group activity.
Hmm.
Reacting to a conductor, reacting to your fellow musicians. How are they playing, tuning, all that stuff?
Yeah.
You don't get the full aspect, the full experience of performing in an ensemble, and that's just really difficult to deal with, both as a student and as the instructor as well.
Yeah. It's really hard, and like as we go further into the future with this, like I know a lot of the directors that I see and like the groups that I'm in is they're all like, well, what do we do if this is like long term?
Hmm.
And I have no idea.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, even like a lot of the professor friends I have, that we talk about just like college classes and all that stuff, it's like um a little bit different in the sense of just like, how do we make sure that these kids get the education that they're paying for, when they're not in your dictation class or not in your theory
Right.
class. You can't hear them in person. It's like you just know, you give somebody like a melodic dictation and they're sitting next to the piano, and
Yeah.
there's nothing you could do about it.
Yeah.
And just giving people the full experience, and after all this, what happens, because music's, like I said, it's a very social thing. You're sitting next to a bunch of people breathing hot air into the same cramped room.
Yeah.
So it's just thinking about the future of like, a lot of courses may go fully digital at some point in the future, just like math and science,
Hmm.
with maybe like a live line for the teacher, but that's never really been an option for things like music, whether it's band, choir, any performing arts really. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I think they'll like unless they can ever get rid of latency,
hmm.
it's just going to be
Oh
impossible.
God, latency is just the trying to rehearse with your students, like you can't
Oh
play
yeah,
the
no,
piano with them, you can't play with them. That's like the most frustrating thing for me
yeah.
with lessons. It's like, let me play with you. That's all I need.
Yeah, if I could just like play it alongside with you, it would make it work, but you can't.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's tough.
and you can't even like you can't even try to make up for the latency because like by the time you're figuring out what it actually is, like
Mhm.
they're also getting off because they hear you.
Yeah, it's the worst. Like I've tried it to the point where like with some vocal students, I'll play along with them just chords wise,
Mhm.
but I you have to just ignore them, which defeats the purpose. Like
Yeah,
if I listen to them, they're obviously like a second behind what I'm doing.
yeah,
But at the very least, I'm accompanying them. But what good does it do to them if I have to ignore them so they could just sing? And
right.
there's way too many issues right now currently with taking like digital music lessons and all that stuff. And
Yeah,
I mean, I'm part of a few other side orchestras where we're just submitting recorded parts. So
mm,
we'll record ourselves very much like some playing tests are being done, but you just lose the aspect of it. I'm sitting here with a click track and a drone, making sure I
yeah.
stay in tune and in time versus listening, adjusting to the conductor, and it's not a real musical experience at the end.
Yeah, and it's so like I've seen so many of those videos of like community orchestras and other groups like with their like this is our digital thing that we did, and it's
Mm-hmm.
never like except for like maybe the Marine Band and like a couple of those really good groups, it's never quite there where like everybody's in tune
Oh
because like
yeah,
nobody's in the room.
yeah.
So
And you can't react, and
yeah.
that's I think that's the biggest thing. Music is live. Every performance is different.
Hmm.
You might play things differently based on the way that people around you are playing, whether
Yeah.
it could be from like the good to the bad, whether it's all of a sudden you guys do these dynamics that have never been done before, or it could even be the bad where it's like you guys are in a performance and you're rushing. All of that stuff
Yeah.
may happen, good or bad, but it happens together and it's natural and organic. Whereas with the click track, um it basically turns every orchestra into just like a bad studio orchestra because at least
Yeah.
they're together in the room recording.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I for one like part of the fun, at least with rehearsing a group, it's like you hear the trumpet section go off, and you're like, okay, now I'm really like getting the style of this, and then it all
Yeah,
starts to like click, like that's a really fun part of like a sight reading experience, and even just like rehearsing things when it like when you
everything
feel the
clicks. Yeah,
room understand what's happening,
yeah,
we're all
yeah,
just working together.
yeah, and that's something you just don't get
Hmm.
with like digital orchestras or anything like that. And like I think it all just ties back to the experience of playing an ensemble is not something that you can recreate online. And
Yeah.
as as an educator, that's my worry for my students, whether it's my private lessons or my students who are on different ensembles themselves, is that
Hmm.
whether they're just beginning, fifth, sixth graders, they're not getting the full experience of playing with other people.
Yeah.
Um, and even more so for my high school students, like a lot of them are thinking of auditioning for college bands and universities and continuing music outside of high
Yeah.
school. And they're losing a real crucial point in their lives when they're performing their hardest repertoire, where they're performing
Yeah.
for the last time, and they're pushing themselves to the limits. They're missing that. The teachers may give them more advanced playing tests, and obviously through no fault of the teacher, but that can't recreate what
Hmm.
they need. And as an educator, that's my worry. Like when they get into the university band, they're going to be weaker performers than people before or after. Overall, generalizing obviously, but just because they didn't have that experience, if you haven't
Yeah.
played in an ensemble for 3-4 months and you get thrown into a university ensemble, assuming university ensembles continue in the fall,
Yeah.
um, and if they don't continue, that's just another issue as music educators in college. Like people are going to college to become the best musicians they can be. Can we really give them their full tuition's worth of experience and
Right.
knowledge online? And if not, what do we do? Because it's not right to charge students
That's true.
to become musicians if you can't give them their full experience.
Definitely. I've seen that concern pop up a lot. Is that like now that or the people that, let's say, started at Cal State Fullerton, either are in their like first, second, or third year, or just starting. Like
Hmm.
they have paid and they're signed up for this degree that they were thinking would be a completely like in-person education.
Yeah.
And obviously, like the online classes exist, but I don't think anyone goes to university like Cal State Fullerton or any other the other state schools, and goes like, I'm okay with 100% online education.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
I mean,
you're expecting that.
that's a big issue because I mean a lot of the schools I'm thinking like Cal State Fullerton, Cal State Long Beach, UCLA, USC, all the big music schools, any real college
Mhm.
that has music in person always use that as an argument against online classes is you don't get the full experience.
Yeah.
That's why it's cheaper. You won't be as good a musician. And now all these same schools are like, well, we can, well, you know, like
Yeah.
it's still the same experience. We can give you the same stuff, and it's not true. At least I don't think it's true for any subject, but more so with music.
Yeah. 100% agree.
Yeah, so
Uh,
it's
yeah. Let's go ahead and move on
for
to
sure.
slightly less heavy stuff. Let's talk about you.
All right.
How did you first decide that you were going to become a professional musician or composer?
Okay. So I actually didn't know I wanted to do music until my senior year of high school, and I didn't know that I knew that I wanted to do music. So all the way through high school, I never really wanted to go to college. I wanted to do more like of a technical career, like be a
Mm-hmm.
mechanic or stuff like that. I just like working with my hands. And I honestly, when it came to music, I didn't learn to really read music until my senior year, or sorry, my freshman year of high school, because I was thrown in a marching band. Um, I kind of had to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So just going on from there, on to my senior year, uh, I didn't want to go to college, but my choir director at the time, I was in both band and choir. My choir director is like, "You need to go to college. You have a good future in music, and you can keep up." So he actually paid for one of my applications to Cal State Fullerton to apply for music, and he's like, "Do you?" Is like, "I will pay this for you if like I will pay for the application if you want to do music, but don't not try just because you're scared." And I went into Cal State Fullerton to be a musician, and I've never regretted it since. So it was definitely a bumpy road getting in. I missed my auditions. Uh, then I missed the late auditions, and I happened to run into Dr. Fennell carrying my trombone in the hallway during the summer. And I was like, "Hey, can I audition?" He's like, "All right, yeah, whatever." And got in, and it was an uphill battle because I didn't have lessons, which is something I wish I had in high school. And it was the whole first year was just learning, and I feel like that made me fall in love with music even more so. It's just seeing the depth of it the first time. And some of my fondest memories are like taking the train to school and just practicing musicianship, practicing harmony, trying to catch up. And I just fell in love with music and theory, and that made me want to become a composer instead of a performer, which was my initial
Interesting.
goal. Yeah.
Yeah. I had a similar experience. I got to my senior year and I was like determined that I was going to be like a therapist.
Hmm.
So I like applied to all these schools as like a psych major, and then my first year at Cal State Fullerton, they were like, since you took AP Psych, you
Hmm.
don't have to take any psych classes your first year. And I was like, okay. So I just took a bunch of GEs and then like about and U band,
Hmm.
and like through playing at that like I you know U band's not that great, but like playing
Yeah.
at like an adult level musical experience
Hmm.
like really got me back into it. And I like I had missed doing it because I was super involved in band in high
Yeah.
school.
Hmm.
So then about halfway through that year, I like talked to Dr. Fennell. I was like, hey, can I be a music major? And then he like brought me in his office and made me play a couple scales, and he was like, well, you suck right now, but
Good
you'll
old
probably
Dr.
get better.
Fennell.
So
That's basically what he told me. He's like, "Why do you want to be a music major? You're not that
yeah.
good." And then,
Yeah.
but I
Well,
think that's the thing I liked about him.
he said something like, um, well, right now it's not very good, but I think I hear something in your
Mhm.
sound, and so
Yeah,
I
I
did
think
okay.
that's the thing I love about Fennell. It's the same similar story for my audition, where it's like I was terrible, and I'm not gonna lie. That
Yeah,
audition was like I wouldn't have even gotten into honor band at that point.
yeah,
And he's just like same ideas. Like there's something in the way when you talk about music, where like he saw not only what you were capable of at the moment, but I think he also saw like what you were capable of becoming.
yeah,
I think that was like one of the really awesome things about him is his ability to see growth as a measurement as well as
yeah.
your current statistics, I guess you could say.
I think I have mixed feelings about Dr. Fennell, but he definitely like I think he's good at like easing a situation down and like making you understand him when he wants to.
Yeah, and then other times he's good at just going off
He's
for no
just
reason.
woo. Were you
Oh,
in? Did you ever do U band?
I was in U band my first semester
Okay.
there. Yeah.
Okay, then you weren't there. There was one year he just like kicked Angelica out of U band for talking or
I
something.
remember her telling me that. Yeah. Yeah. He did a similar thing my first semester in symphonic winds actually. He was
Mhm.
rehearsing the clarinets or some other woodwind section for a good while, a good 30 minutes. So Kyle and I were playing rock, paper, scissors
Oh boy.
quietly in the back.
Yeah.
And he just like called me out in the front of the whole ensemble, just like, if you continue talking like that, I put you in this band. I'm not scared to take you out. And I'm just like, whoo.
Yeah.
And I went to his office hours after to apologize. Like, oh no, everyone else was talking, so I needed somebody to kind of be the blame man. And I'm like, oh, all right. I'm glad it was me. The lottery.
Oh my
I
gosh.
won.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember my first year. He like told me to be ashamed. I'd be ashamed of myself one time.
Yeah,
It was
he's definitely one way or the other.
okay. Cool. Let's. Okay, so now we've talked about the degree. What would you say the value of it was to you? Like,
Woo.
or the value of an undergrad degree in music?
It definitely depends on what you choose to go for,
Mm,
composition, education, liberal arts, whatever you want to do. But I think the value of the music degree always comes down to the classes and the experiences that you get out of it. It
mm,
is very unlike science degrees, math degrees, degrees like that, where getting the degree unlocks many doors for you. Just
yeah.
having that piece of paper, you don't need to have experience. A lot of places just say, have this piece of paper, and these
Yeah.
jobs are now available. Music doesn't work like that. You can
No.
have all the papers and they will mean nothing in the world. Trust me, my bachelor's of music degree is hanging in my room looking real nice, doing nothing for me. But that being said, the degree wasn't the objective. It's more so the knowledge and the experiences and the connections you're able to make
Mhm.
during those 4 or 5 years, however long you take for your undergraduate degree. Um, Specifically the undergraduate degree, you're building your first few foundations, whether it's the instructors you meet, the other people that you meet that are going to be in your same discipline, whether it be educators,
Mhm.
performers, composers. A lot of the commissions I've gotten have been through fellow classmates who wanted a piece commissioned.
Yeah.
A lot of instructors have like engraving jobs, things like that. I still am very close with two of the instructors from there who opened up a lot of pathways for me that I know if I'm ever in a tight spot, I can talk to them and be like, hey, this is what's going on. Where can I go from here? So
Mhm.
I think there's this very misconstrued conception of these degrees are worthless, which the degrees themselves, yes, they are
Yeah.
worthless, aside from the fact that they unlock higher education, whether it's
Yeah.
credential
I,
program or master's.
yeah.
Um, but it's all about the experiences. So while you're an undergrad, do everything you can. If there's competitions, join the competitions. If there's any extra things you can do, involve yourself as much as you can, because there should be no rush to get to that end goal, because there's nothing at that finish line. It
Yeah.
really is truly about everything you do up to that degree.
Yeah. It's pretty much just a goalpost. And I would say just like within our industry, the degree is important. In that like they won't even they a lot of places won't even look at you unless you have like a degree,
Uh-huh.
but in music, and I think in other like fine arts things, like you got to back that shit up.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
uh,
100%.
it
Yeah.
just because you got a degree doesn't mean anything, and
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that you're what they're looking for either. So
Exactly.
there are good tuba players for certain situations, and there are good tuba players for other situations.
Yes.
It's
And
not going to
that
work all the
that
time.
comes down to your ensembles, what you're in. If you want to be a freelance, tuba player, you better join some freelance bands in and get those connections in your bachelor's, because
Yeah,
just because you have a bachelor's degree, no group's gonna hire you unless they know who you are and who you've played with.
yeah,
And I think it also just goes to show. I mean, there was a trumpet player at Cal State Fullerton. I forgot who it was, who didn't get his bachelor's, dropped out because he got an audition with Pacific Symphony, and he made it in as one of their trumpet players. So
mm,
it's like, why do I need that piece of paper?
right,
I'm clearly I have what I need. But he took those lessons seriously. He got what
yeah,
he could out of those lessons, and it just kind of goes to show, it goes both ways. Degree is not a bad thing. It's not something where it's just like, oh yeah, I shouldn't get it, but everything in the middle between
hmm,
there, that's where your growth happens, and it's what you make out of that. Unless you want to be involved in academia, for example, like my end goal eventually is to be a college professor. So those degrees for me are kind of the milestones I have to hit before I get taken seriously within academia. Kind of like you said, if you
yeah,
don't have a bachelor's degree, everyone's just going to be like, all right, well, you know,
yeah,
what you said may be right, but I ain't going to back it up.
yeah.
Yeah,
There's an expectation of like, you know, we can test him on so many things, but to have the bachelor's degree, like we're pretty sure he's going to have the background that we're looking for too, especially in education.
exactly.
Uh,
And a lot of it's just the name. Like,
yeah,
you know somebody with a bachelor's degree from like Fullerton, Long Beach, USC, UCLA, they're gonna have a certain amount of music
yeah,
experience, and um, that you could rely on, versus some schools with an unfortunately weaker program like UCR or San Bernardino.
yeah,
Um, you kind of know where the school's music program is, and that kind of defines the value more so of the degree itself.
yeah. And it's definitely like telling that like in the educator world, like so many of the jobs in SoCal are Cal State Fullerton and Cal State LA.
Hmm.
Like those are all filled up with people from those schools.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so we get around.
Definitely. But yeah, I think that's what it comes down to. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
taking it seriously along the way, getting the most you can out of it while you're
Mm-hmm.
there, and at the end, just knowing what your school's good for. Is your school a performance school? Is it a jazz? Is it classical? Just
Right.
knowing those kind of little things is always good to know.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Any student that's listening to this ever, you should always like figure out the strong points of your university, like no matter what major, but especially with like music and arts things. Like you could go to a good art school, but if you want to be an animation major, like that might not be the right school for you.
Yeah, and
uh
then a lot of it also, just adding on to that too, is not so much where you go, but who you're with.
that
So
too.
check, especially when it comes to music. Obviously, that being what I've done the most part, knowing who the teachers are. You may go to a school that's seen as like, oh, it's not a really good music school, but if there's a phenomenal musician that teaching there, then that might be the
Yeah,
place for you to go. It all depends on your goals and what your end
yeah.
game is.
And sometimes it just takes the like regardless of how well the other classes are, it takes the right person to kind of like light that fire under you to
Hmm.
like make you get it and want to really understand the subjects. And the ones where the school is weaker
Hmm.
might fill themselves out by you doing the extra legwork.
Yeah, so just make sure you check them out and talk to the faculty. That's one thing obviously I never did with such a late
Yeah,
audition and just entering so late to everything. But meet the instructors. They usually have some like high school, or if you're transferring from junior college, they have some sort of like event where it's like end of the composition and like the composers forum.
mm-hmm.
Fennell would always invite students from like high schools and other junior colleges to go check stuff out and kind
Yeah,
of get a feel for the program, the people there and stuff. Just make sure that the place is just right for you too.
yeah. Definitely. Those are all really good things. I try to like get my students to go to things, but like we're so far away from all the colleges that it's a little bit challenging.
Yeah,
So it's like
it's
a half-hour drive for most of the things.
oy, oy.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So on that, like what are the degree or what are the career prospects that someone with like a composition degree might be looking at? And then what are you looking at?
All right. Okay. So the fun questions. So
Yeah.
for careers for composition, there's a variety of different careers. Most of them are in education. So it kind of depends. When you pick to be a composer, you kind of get two paths. You could be a composer where it's like you are living off of your music,
Mm-hmm.
or you can choose to be X thing that happens to compose on the side.
Yeah.
The straight composition route is not for me. And the
Okay.
reason for this is when you're doing straight composition, you're taking commissions day in, day out. You are writing day in for day out for multiple people with multiple requests, all demanding different things for
Yeah.
themselves. So you might be writing a French folk style opera for one group while you're writing some gypsy jazz inspired tunes for some other group. And
Right.
you don't usually get a lot of say in certain commissions that, especially the ones that pay really well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I never liked writing on demand. I liked writing when I wanted to write. That was one of my things. And as a composer, I pride myself in having music that I'm proud of, that I like.
Mm-hmm.
And as a freelance, or not freelance, as a full-time composer, until you make it big, think like Kelly, Whitaker, like the really big names, you are writing at the mercy of everyone. You are traveling all the time
Mm-hmm.
to meet these deadlines and meet with people, and that's not my style.
You're right.
From there, the other thing is just composing on the side where you write for commissions, and you take commissions on a personal basis. So you can take some, deny some, and you're always just composing what you want to work on. And for myself, I personally teach, and I'm an educator on the side as well as a gigging musician because I love to play music still, and I
Mm-hmm.
love to teach music. So my end goal is to become a professor of composition one day, in theory, and go that route. But you could do a lot of stuff. For my master's program, a lot of people that I know have gone into film music.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really big one. Film and video game music is huge. Is
Yeah.
super huge right now. I have friends working for Riot. I have friends working for Blizzard, for Sony, all these different video game companies.
Yeah.
Um, and that's a really big thing. And especially considering everything that's going on right now, everything's done digital. Most of
Mm-hmm.
them didn't their life didn't change at all because their work was done on their laptop,
Right.
digital composition and stuff. So that's one thing I guess to keep in mind just going into the future. So there's film scores, video game scores. I have some people that write for kind of like carnival stuff. They write music for show tunes for like carnivals, for things
Interesting.
like Cirque du Soleil,
Huh.
stuff like that. So there's a bunch of different things you could do with composition, but the main thing about composition is you have to go out, look, meet people. None of these jobs are posted on like Glassdoor or
Right.
Indeed or anything like that. All of these jobs come through connections. It all
Right.
comes through people that you've met through networking, through doing all of these things in your undergrad and graduate degrees. Everybody I know that was like, I'll just look for a job after has been sorely, sorely mistaken because, like I said, these aren't jobs that are posted online. These are jobs that are handed to people within that same
Yeah.
community.
Yeah. All right. And so you're looking to be a college. You're going to be the next like Dr. Valitsky then, huh?
Hopefully better. We all try to learn from our teachers and
Yeah.
always be better than than they were.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do want to teach just because elementary school I didn't have the best teacher. Didn't even teach me to hold my instrument right.
Oh
Middle
boy.
school, the teacher just kind of gave up on everybody who wasn't like good. High school was my first really good band teacher, and
Mm-hmm.
then I never had people as intense as Valitsky and Fennell. So just seeing the way, not so much that they practiced their education, but the way they took it seriously. Rogers, Fennell, even Madsen took all their educations to like a very serious extent, and I
Yeah.
appreciated that greatly.
Yeah.
Um, and that's what made me want to become an educator, especially for the college level. I love educating high school, middle school, because it's starting off strong foundations. But I've always been a theory and like history nerd at heart. So when I
Mm,
can really gush about all these higher level topics and seeing students where I was struggling. I mean, I got a 32% on my first theory exam in
oh boy.
college.
Yeah.
So it's like seeing people there. I've been in their shoes. I know how hard it is, and I know how to address those issues because I lived
Yeah.
them and I had to work hard to get past it. And I that's why I enjoy teaching and want to be a college professor myself.
Very nice. That's noble. I feel very similarly. There were, I mean, I had good directors pretty much my whole like school days, but like it wasn't until I met people like Dr. Volitsky and Dr. Fennell and Dr. Dickey
Mm-hmm.
that are people that are just like I always took it just seriously enough to like get it done, get things
Mm-hmm.
done. But like those guys are like, why are you not an expert at this if you could be better? Like
Mm-hmm.
they're the kind of people that can kind of like their expectations of you are high because they know that
Mm-hmm.
like you're smart and you can do it. And like
Mm-hmm.
when you disappoint them, you're like, oh shit. Uh,
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. It hurts.
yeah. So you're just like it takes that kind of inspiration, and like Dr. Baker too. Like Cal State Fullerton has a lot of
A
really
lot of
good.
fantastic teachers, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, my moment out of all people, funnily enough, came from Dr. Rogers. It was in one of his composition classes on one of his famous tirades.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think it just helped me see things differently because before that, he'd always gone on his tirades, but I'd never taken him seriously because everyone was always like, he tends to go off about many little things. But
Yeah.
that day it was just kind of, we were all working on this project and myself included kind of half-assed it. It was a counterpoint project. We're writing just notation and I wrote it on a blank piece of just, not even blank, it was like a scrap piece of paper. We
Mm-hmm.
all turned it in and he flew off the handles just like, why would you do this? And I just remember he just says like, he's like, do you guys not care about music? Do you care about music so little that this project where you're supposed to be writing music is turned in on a piece of scrap paper? And I never
Wow.
really thought of it that way. And
Yeah.
everyone else is kind of shrugging it off at the same time, but it kind of hit me that day. It's just like, I want to be a composer. I should be taking this as seriously as he's taking it.
Right.
Um, and then the other thing was Volitsky when he told us like, your teachers here are going to be your competition when you graduate. If you're like a performer, if you're a composer, whatever you are, they're going to be going for the same gigs that you're going for.
Mm-hmm.
So he's like, we're taking it seriously because we want you guys to be as good as you can. And just thinking about that always, just like whether I'm in Baker's class, like I got to know as much as Dr. Baker knows eventually. I got to know as much as Dr. Volitsky knows eventually. And just seeing how wide that gap was just kind of lit it under me. Just like, okay, I got to take this seriously if I'm
Yeah.
going to do anything really.
Yeah. I those college experiences I cannot like trade for anything else. Of just like these are the people that are experts in their field, and like I want to be amongst them.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. So what are you working on right now as far as like higher education things? So you're working on your master's, you said?
I finished my master's.
Okay.
Right now I'm getting a credential program.
Okay.
So I want to get my teaching credential just because I thought if I'm going to be teaching, I might as well get my teaching credential and have that there. But
Yeah.
I'm also just working for my auditions for the doctoral program. Um,
Cool.
so the entrance exams are coming up pretty soon. But eventually, I want to get into the doctoral program and just take my time with that, learn as much as I can
Mm-hmm.
along the way. I want to teach at high school at some point before I teach at university because I just feel if you're teaching, it's really important to learn all aspects of teaching. I've taught college courses a couple of times already, so I
Mm-hmm.
kind of got the gist of it. But I do want to teach at a public school, aside from the private schools, to see where my students are coming from, what kind of environments, what kind of things the teachers have to deal with. Because I think it's one thing when you're just teaching higher education, you're like,
Yeah.
what the hell's wrong with all these high school teachers? They're sending me these kids who don't know their scales, they don't know this. Then you become a high school teacher and you're just like, when do I have time
Right.
between concerts, all these events that I have to do, all these requirements, all these meetings to teach all these kids scales and make sure that they learn it, you know?
Yeah.
And it's really hard to fail kids in band. It's a difficult prospect because it's like most kids who don't want to be in band won't be in band.
Right.
So if they're failing their practice exams, if they're failing their scales, things like that, there's usually some other issue there, and it's just hard finding out what it is with so many students, so many things. And that's something, if you only taught in college, you might just see all these uneducated,
Yeah.
like quote unquote kids coming in, where a lot of them are talented, a lot of them have the drive to be there. They just, the education system didn't provide them the best means to accomplish that, everything that they could in the time allowed.
Yeah. And a lot of them is sometimes it's just like a matter of like they don't understand what is good enough.
Mm-hmm.
They go like, okay, well, I can kind of play with some mistakes, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And like getting them to like get that, like, no, we want to be as good as you can possibly be.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
make it like as good as you can make it. There's no point where you should be like, okay, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. I mean,
and I come up against kids saying that a lot in my classroom. It's just like,
mm-hmm.
well, like I can kind of play it, so like I'm done practicing for today. I'm like, no, you're not.
No. I always tell my students, you got to play it until you can't. What is that? You can't play it wrong.
Right.
Yeah, that's the goal, because when you're in front of an audition of some of the best musicians you've ever seen in your life, and they're on the
Yeah.
panel, you can't play it wrong. Like,
Right.
at that point, at that level, everyone's playing it right. It's just who interprets it better at that
Yeah.
point. So mistakes are just like a big no-no.
Yeah. And that
So,
auditions are really the important ones, because like when you're playing in front of an audience of people that don't know music, you can
mm-hmm.
get away with a lot of like dumb shit,
Yeah.
because they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But like educated people that are like listening just to you,
Mm-hmm.
they can hear it.
Yeah, and mind you, a lot of those people did the same BS you did
Yeah.
on
That
stage
too.
themselves. Like, oh, you didn't really play that run, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, look, how'd you know? I hit it so well. I guess I hit it the same way. So
Yeah.
nice try, but I
Because I
saw
know,
that.
like, even now in like the community bands that I'm in, like if there's a run,
Mm-hmm.
like I don't have time to practice that most of the time, so I'm just like, okay, I'm just gonna go with it, and usually
Yeah,
that's fine.
yeah, yeah. But when you're playing in front of people, people know.
Yeah. Okay, where are you getting your doctor, or where are you applying?
A bunch of places. So I'm applying locally at UCI, Cal State, not sorry, UCI, UCLA, USC, San Bernardino, as well as UCR for the ethnomusicology program, Princeton. That's the only Ivy League I'm applying to because I really love the teacher there. University of Music in New York, Massachusetts University are the places
Yeah,
that I have so far. But
that's a
gotta
wide net. Yeah.
gotta cast a really really wide net. Doctorates are they have to really really want you because they pretty much pay for everything. You should never really pay for a doctorate in music. So yeah.
Interesting. Very cool. I remember Dr. Why can't I remember her name right now? Dr. Cornett.
Cornet.
There we go. I don't know why. I love for Dr. Cornett.
Uh-huh.
She was saying she had like 6 digits worth of like student loans by the time she finished her doctorate.
Oh yeah, a lot of the student loans for the doctorate probably come from just cost of living.
Yeah,
Like
I'd
the school
imagine.
will pay for everything, but you gotta live somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's a big job just being a doctorate student. You're teaching pretty much full time. Um, then you're researching full time, and not to mention that fatty paper you got to turn in at the end and pray that it gets accepted. So it's hard, it's expensive, but master's degree is also pretty expensive. A lot
Yeah.
of costs accrue with that, but it's just trying to find the best way to balance it and not dig too deep that you will
Right.
never get out.
Right. Let's see. Okay. Next question. How do you think your cultural background has affected the music that you compose and your position within the industry right now?
Ooh, a lot.
Kind of big.
I never, when I first started, I never wanted, or not never wanted, I never really considered my culture or my
Mhm.
particular background to be an influential part of my music. I listened to, obviously, music from Mexico because that's what I grew up with and that's what I always knew, but I never was like, I want to incorporate these into my compositions.
Right.
Um, and I think it's just the more I did composition, the more I saw these kind of rhythms show up, whether it's my background in just like rock and alternative music or like Mexican music, traditional music, music of Latin America. My undergrad was kind of the discovery of that I'm like, I have this side and this identity that I'm really proud of and really want to incorporate into my music. I want to
Right.
share this. Because I want to have a voice that's my own here. So I kind of did that.
Mhm.
Master's degree was digging way more into that. I took a lot of music history classes on the music of Latin America, the music of Mexico. I focused a lot on the Mexican and South American composers to the point where I know way more music from them than I do European composers.
Wow.
Um, and it definitely shaped me up a lot. A lot of my music has some sort of influence of my heritage, of my cultural background,
Mhm.
because it's something that's unique to me, and it's not just of my own cultural background, but the blending of it
Right.
incorporates the rock that I learned when I got here, and the dances that I heard growing up in Mexico, a lot of stuff like that, which translated later into ethnomusicology. I write a lot of papers about the history of music and social policies in Mexico, how it affected things growing up. I write a lot more papers on Mexican composers that on New Grove Online for Music may only have a third of a page filled out, whereas Bach, you could never reach the bottom of
Right.
that page. And composers that were extremely influential that just don't get talked about because they're not part of the Western canon. And
Right.
um, I think my own cultural background brought that to me. It's like there's so much good, more so than just like music from my country, but just in general, there's so much good music out there
Mhm.
written that was never documented, that was never recorded. That's beautiful, it's amazing, and it's different, all in its own aspects. And in terms of my own sphere, I became known more as like that Latin American composer amongst my peers, which isn't a bad thing. That was like my style. Even my professor for my graduate program, the reason I went there is two of them. One was from Argentina, and she's the one I studied with, and
Mhm.
I got a lot of scholarships for writing Latin American inspired music, Latin American inspired festivals, composers of Latin America promoting this kind of
Mhm.
uh, diversity within composition, which has tended to be a very homogenous group. But it's definitely influenced my career and my path a lot more than I ever thought it would, just starting off university. Um, but I think it can go both ways. It doesn't have to be what defines you.
Yeah.
If you enjoy it, then there's nothing wrong with getting more out of your own experiences and putting yourself into it more.
Mhm.
So,
So a lot of my students, so I teach in Soledad, California.
okay.
And a lot of my students are children of migrant workers who do a lot of the vegetable picking. And so it's like 93% Mexican American student body.
Okay.
So for them, could you name like a couple like of the composers that you think they should be listening to?
Oh yeah, definitely. So probably the most famous one is going
Mm-hmm.
to be Moncayo. He wrote pretty much the unofficial national anthem of Mexico, which is Huapango.
Mm-hmm.
So that one's a really good one. Other than that, a really successful one, especially within the United States because of Dudamel, is Arturo Marquez, who wrote Dance on Number 2 being his most successful piece. Dance on Number 8 is actually, not 9, Dance on Number 9, I believe, is actually being premiered by the LA Phil this summer, assuming that
Wow.
that concert still goes through. So he's still a living acting composer.
Wow.
Roberto Sierra, also a living acting composer, teaches at Princeton, wrote a lot of like guitar music. He's from Sinaloa, Mexico. Um, uh, Marquez is from, I believe, also Sinaloa, Mexico. Uh, those are like the biggest ones. If you're thinking more like classical, obviously there's Revueltas and Chavez. Chavez being very important because he basically founded the institution of music learning in Mexico. He was the first
Wow.
chair of education, instructed by the president at that time, Vasconcelos, to establish this musical repertoire. So he started the Mexican National Orchestra. He was actually really good friends with Copeland and other people here and Bernstein while they were setting up everything in the States, and
Hmm.
a real fascinating dude with some really amazing music. So those are the biggest names of composition
Okay.
in Mexico.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you for sharing that. I know I wrote those down, and I hope any of my students that are listening are writing these things down to like look up these people and listen to their music, because I think it's like really important to not only listen to music of different cultures, but listen to music that like comes from where you're from. To
Definitely. And then just to kind of tie it into like everything, I mean, let's take Marquez, Danzón Número Dos. So he actually wrote this based off of melody that he heard growing up. All
Mhm.
of the danzons are based off that same melody. It's basically just variations.
Mhm.
And Marquez is really good, close friends with Dudamel, which we all know is from Venezuela, one of the best music education systems he's ever created around the world, El Sistema over there. Um, and then even then, Dudamel is really good friends with I'm blanking on his name, but he's known as Residente, the rapper. So
Mhm.
even I remember when I went to go watch Danzón Número Dos being played by the LA Phil. At the end, they had a reggaeton kind of concert with some members of the orchestra that did backup for Residente, and he's also doing this in the summer as well. And Residente is a really interesting person. He's known very popularly for his band Calle 13, which is a rap group, but
Mhm.
he's done a lot of ethnomusicology stuff where he's traveled the world, gotten live recordings of people from like the Himalayas, from China, from places, and used their music to create this kind of blend with like reggaeton and stuff. And he's really good friends with Dudamel, and also really good friends with Lin Manuel Miranda, who is very
Mhm.
popular for Hamilton and
Yeah.
In the Heights, that's going to be coming out soon. So a lot of this stuff ties together, like the Latin American community, whether it's from Mexico,
Mhm.
Venezuela, South America, all that stuff.
Yeah.
They're very close knit because we faced a lot of the same issues, whether it be poverty, oppression within your own country, having to immigrate somewhere else. A lot of this stuff has to do with that, and I think, especially as students, it's good to hear things like this. Even the story of Hamilton, like the whole thing
Mhm.
about that is like an immigrant came to this country and made so much of himself, because you could do it, just
Yeah.
things like that. Very fantastic things to listen to and very good role models to have in people.
Yeah. Great. I'm so glad. Like that's one of the big things that I wanted to be able to share here is these kind of like you know we personal connections to different parts of the musical world, and
Yeah.
that's awesome to hear all these new things for me.
I'm glad to
Um,
share.
and that's great. Okay, what else are we doing? Back to like school things.
Hmm.
What class did you struggle with most in your undergrad? Do you think?
Oh God, music theory. That was the absolute bane of my existence. Like I mentioned, I had zero theory training whatsoever. I didn't even know what key signatures were or how to know what
Oh
key
boy!
you're in. So
Wow.
like I knew there was like a B flat major and an E flat major, but I never correlated key signatures to the
Uh huh.
key that we're playing in.
Oh boy.
So I remember, like I mentioned, I got like a 32% on my very first theory exam in Valitsky's class. Remember very vividly because he's just like, "Why are you here?" I was.
Yeah.
He handed his papers out in grade order, and mine. I remember mine was the last one, and I
Ooh.
remember he was like, "By far the last one." Placed the paper on my desk, and I was like, "Oi!"
Yeah.
um, and it was a struggle, man. Like, it really is like a second language, and he just goes so fast. Just I remember just learning intervals was like, okay, what's F to A? I'm like, F, G, A, and then like he's already too late. Someone had to answer by
Yeah.
then. I'm like, I can't even say my alphabet that fast, man. And I'm tying in music theory and musicianship because they were kind of the same class. I had musicianship with Dr. Siebenaller,
Oh boy, me too.
phenomenal teacher,
Yeah.
but that class was hard.
So hard.
I remember by the end we were doing like modal singing, and like the first day I'm like, I can't sing a third. I was in choir, but God help me, I cannot sing a third. I don't know what that sounds like.
Yeah.
But those classes were my biggest struggle. I spent countless hours on the daily just trying to catch up to where everybody was, let alone ace anything at all. And it ended up later being my strongest and one of my favorite subjects.
Yeah. I mean, that's some irony for you. I mean, I felt the same way my first year. I think musicianship and music theory were just like crazy, and it also felt really intense because you knew that Unal, Volitsky, and Siebenaller were also like they had like an active role in like weeding people out.
Oh yeah.
So like you could feel they're like, this kid's not gonna make it. Judgment.
Yeah.
Like,
oh yeah. I could hear it. I could literally hear it.
Like Unal would just be disappointed. Like she'd play an interval for you, and she'd just be like really disappointed that you couldn't get it.
Yeah, she's just like, that was a third, and just give you this face of like, how could you not know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, or a fifth or a fourth, like, because I struggle with fourths for whatever reason. Like I tend to confuse them with major sixth. And so whenever I'd guess like a fourth wrong, she'd be like, "That is a perfect fourth," and just the judgment and the like, I'm in pain.
Yeah, and I think
the whole
that's like
class too.
That's the hard thing about musicianship. You're not only failing in front of the instructor, but literally everybody else. And it's like you get picked after like the whole class just went perfect, and you're just like, oh God. They just play something like, was that a seventh? Was that a tritone? I don't know, but I already used up my last like listening, so like I'm gonna go for it. And those were painful times.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important to the fundamentals of being a musician, why it was so stressful as well, because I feel like definitely my first semester was the most stressful in music theory and musicianship. After that, it really did feel like it kind of curved like a gentle slope. There was some times where it kind of spiked in difficulty, but it was never quite an uphill battle like first semester.
Yeah, I mean it helped that I think Siebenaller like basically rammed us through the whole thing.
Yes, that is exactly what I say all the time. Like when I got to Unal's like second and third semester of musicianship, I was like, I could do this in my sleep. Like I was terrified of Siebenaller, like in a good way for his class, because I was like, this is hard. We're singing modal scales. We're seeing these crazy intervals. We're identifying chord quality and chord progressions and trying to play piano and sing at the same time. I was like, when we got to Unal's second semester, I'm like, oh, okay, all right, I could do this.
I even I was like, I kind of wanted to take like Siebenaller's second semester and just be like, how far can I take this? How much can I do here?
Yeah, like he was pushing. And I liked it. It was enjoyable once you're able to kind of establish your groove. But I definitely could see and saw some people who just kind of fell off because that train had no brakes. It was only going faster. And if you got left behind, God help you, because
and I even we did all that, and then the test that you have to do, or the interview that you have to do for the credential program at Cal State Fullerton, all we had to do was like sightseeing.
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, I did this the first time. This is easy.
Yeah.
Like, I don't even know why I prepared for that part. It was like, oh, here's a thing. Like, just hum it and you're good. It's like, no. I had to do this like upside down with solfege.
Upside down with solfege while playing a varied accompaniment on my left hand.
Yeah.
And someone's yelling at me out of tune in my right ear.
Like,
Yeah, that class was hard, but I don't think any class prepared me for the following class much like that one. That
yeah,
was just 100% more than I needed.
yeah. But and it was like good, and I felt like even though he was like kind of judging everyone, like I didn't really feel as bad in that class as I did in my first theory class.
Yeah, I feel like for him, it was like this gentle judge.
Yeah.
Like, whereas, like, I feel like Volitsky was the executioner. There is no jury. He is judge, jury, and executioner in
Yes.
his class. Unal was just kind of the disappointed parent, where
Yeah.
you just feel really bad because you let him down.
Yeah.
I think for Dr. Siebenaller, he was the most balanced, where it's like
Yeah.
you could
He's
see he
just
was disappointed, but
yeah.
he also gave you this like smile, like, all
Yeah,
right,
he'd
next
always I was
time.
gonna say he'd smile and he'd be like, okay.
Yeah, yeah. He's like, just I remember for my class, I believe he always said something like, "All right, it was closer than last time," and I'm just like, I don't know if that's an insult or a compliment, but I'm getting better, so I'm gonna take it.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take
Yeah.
that gladly. But yeah, his class was an experience. It was probably one of my favorite music classes that I ever took, just because, like he said, it was one of the most difficult, and it really pulled more out of me than I ever thought I actually had in me.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. That's one thing I always really liked about Steven Aller is that like he sets the expectations, he does not lower them one bit.
hmm
Um and you just do it for him. You either do it
Yeah.
or you don't. There's no
Yeah, he
like
forces you to his
yeah.
level. He does not stoop down at all.
No.
And I
And he
think
doesn't
that's
even he just kind of stands there. Like it's one of those like kung fu movies where like this dude is just like standing there. He's like, just do it. And
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
and there's no like he doesn't like give you a rope to pull yourself up. He's just like, okay, get up here.
Yep.
Do it.
Yep.
Get up here.
That's like, I don't know how to sing in Locrian. Well, we're about to learn. Come on up.
Yeah.
It's just like, oh, God.
Well, you're gonna find out.
A literal trial by fire. But I think the cool thing about that is how often people were surprised in that class.
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember that exact example, the Locrian scale. One of our classmates got called up, and she's like, "I can't do this. I don't know what I'm doing." And he's like, "Well, you've been doing really good in your analysis, or in your ear training. So can you sing a second up from this note, a minor second? Now sing a major second." And she did that, and then he's like, "Now do it all in order." She did that. You just did your Locrian scale, and then she was just like,
Yeah.
wait, if I combine all of these like skills that we've done before, I can do this very complex thing, and it's not as complex as I thought it was. And I think
Yeah.
that was, or he really knew how to turn things into a learning experience versus just like a shameful experience kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. He's very good on the making it educational for everybody and just kind of being like, this is my expectations. I can show you the building blocks,
hmm
but you got to do it.
Yeah, you got to put it together, and I think that
Yeah.
was one
Yeah.
of the cooler things.
Yeah, and I like that about him, and I like that a lot. I feel like Baker did that pretty well too.
hmm
Um, so our undergrad was pretty good. I have to say.
Yeah,
Did pretty well.
100%. A few sour classes, but
That
that can happen anyway.
One or two history classes, you know.
Oh my God, that history class was.
You
I
know,
learned a lot about
sometimes.
learned a lot about Wagner. A lot.
Yeah. Did we even learn a lot about Wagner?
I had to. I had to pull information about Wagner that I didn't know I had. I had to pull a lot of it out. Oh my God! And
I love how he made it our fault that he was behind.
After we spent 3 weeks on the same song every time. Oh my God. Oh,
You're
I think
stuck in the 19th century for so
my
long.
favorite part, hands down, is when he's like, "You guys do half the study guide, I'll give you the other half." And then he's just like, "You know what? I'm just not gonna give you the other half of the study guide." What a pump fake. He had us all good, and then we're all just like, "Who? What?" Oh my goodness. Oh, that was that
It was
was
crazy. That
that was that was an experience, is what it was. I don't know if it was a class. It was an experience and a half.
Here, write everything you know about Wagner in 30 minutes, and also I'm behind, so we're going to be teaching after this.
I just, I'll never forget the look we all gave each other that day. Just 2 days prior, I'm not going to put anything about Wagner on this exam because he's talked about so much. 2 days later, tell me everything you know about Wagner.
The whole exam is Wagner.
Oh my god! And then just also don't go in depth about his anti-Semitism. We all know that. It's like, all right, that's 80% of the things I know about Wagner out the window. Okay, let's go. I'm ready. Oh my goodness, that was a fun one.
Did you enjoy ethnomusicology at Cal State Fullerton? Or they don't call that, they call it world music at Cal
World
State Fullerton?
music.
Yeah.
Um, I feel like the class had a lot of room to grow still. If
Mm-hmm.
I enjoyed the class, but my, like, from taking what I would say are much more established ethnomusicology classes per se, right? Um, I would say the class felt very young, like it was still in its learning stages of like what should be on the test, what
Okay.
shouldn't be on the test, and I've I've never been a fan of listening tests that force you to remember information based off of what a listening example. And let me clarify that a little bit. So the way that test was studied for was very much, oh, this piece starts with so these are the facts I need to regurgitate about that. This piece starts with that funny sounding drum, so I got to regurgitate these facts
Yeah.
about it. I think it's much more beneficial to either limit the listening examples so that the students are able to go into them in depth and comfortably know the pieces well, or simply provide the students the names of the pieces and have them explain why the pieces are important. And I think that's a much more valid way of testing, because the names
Mm-hmm.
of pieces aren't what make them important. The Rite of Spring isn't important because it's called the Rite of Spring. It's important because of what it caused in the music community.
Right.
And I think it's even more so when it comes to world music. So a lot of the music we're talking about within that class isn't like European entertainment music. Some of it holds some cultural or religious values. And I think that a lot of that is very undermined by forcing students to remember 24 listening examples while
Mm-hmm.
only knowing that only 6 will be chosen on the exam and graded.
Yeah.
That was my first gripe with it. The other gripe is just the structure of it. I liked the discussion, how it was more like a discussion. I did enjoy that because we were all kind of sitting in a circle a lot of the time and discussing back and forth. But I feel like the discussions could have been just slightly more streamlined, because I felt like very quickly they got out of hand, off
Yeah.
topic. Whereas the other discussion classes I took on ethnomusicology, obviously part of it had to do because everybody was in a graduate course and they were a lot more focused on the end goal. But the teacher was always able to make sure that if we got a little bit too far off track, to tie it back in gently to the main topic and
Mm-hmm.
keep going from there. But I am a huge proponent of world music classes. I do believe that there should be a lot more world music, quote unquote, included in music history, because music history is not just the history of just Western European music,
Right.
but of music all around the world. And if you're like a composer like myself and you're all you learn about is European music, and then all of a sudden you start learning about all these other composers that were always out there that interacted with these European or American composers and had as big, if not bigger, impact than certain composers at certain times. That's important to know, and
Mm-hmm.
I believe it creates um, just a bigger language for musicians to speak, knowing that
Yeah.
there's more out there, and that's why
Yeah.
I do believe that there should be more of that included. I do understand that a lot of it has to do with time and academia just having very strict expectations of what everybody should know universally.
Yeah.
But as an educator in higher education, that is one thing that I try to change. I try to include. Um, I've unfortunately only gotten the chance to teach an overview of music history class once,
Hmm.
but that once I become a full-time professor, hopefully one day, that is one thing I want to institute is offer a lot more classes on,
Hmm.
for myself, the history of Latin America, because that's my area of
Right.
expertise. But I would love to have more classes from music from other countries, other cultures, and there's just a lot to know and learn in that.
Yeah, I mean, I love folk music and other and world music and like things that are not just like the traditional Western European like concert
Hmm.
music, you know,
Yeah.
and even like the Western European like polkas and other things that are like common
Hmm.
music from those places. Like I dig those things.
Yeah.
And they're like a lot. People need to go listen to those things, and like a lot of the things that we studied in like 20th century are based on those kind of like folk tunes and stuff that
Yeah, I mean, just pretty
people.
much Bartok's
Yeah,
whole repertoire.
right.
And I think what people need to remember too is like cultural history isn't so much Beethoven, Bach, Brahms, and all these composers. It's more so the polka, the folk music. You have to remember most people who listen to the music that we study were wealthy, and
Yeah,
um, a lot like just statistically speaking, a lot of us living back then would not have been that wealthy, and we
yeah,
would have been listening to folk music. Folk music is what really tells the tale of the common man
yeah,
and what life was like for everybody. So I definitely agree. Where it's just like it doesn't matter which region from, but just popular and folk music is something that definitely needs to be covered a lot more.
yeah, yeah. I agree. um I felt I took the one class that we had to take at Cal State Fullerton,
Uh huh.
and I felt it was taught really poorly.
Hmm.
I don't know if I took it the same semester that you did or if you took it later.
I don't
um
remember.
yeah, at some point I was only taking education classes, so like
Hmm.
but I felt that he spent like way too much time like introducing the concept of what we were listening to
Hmm.
and not listening to any of the music. Like I wanted him to be like, okay, this is what this is. Like, this is Tuvan throat singing,
Hmm.
and then like play Tuvan throat singing, and then he
Hmm.
would talk about it. But he'd spend like 15 to 20 minutes just like introducing the idea of it. Like,
Yeah.
okay, I get it. Like, can I listen? And I'd just be sitting there really frustrated.
Hmm.
That was my experience with that class.
Yeah,
Um,
and the other thing about that class too that I didn't like, I mean, I liked it as a student, like grade wise, but teaching wasn't good, was um, letting us use the study guide to take the test. And
oh
the
wow.
reason I say this is for us, for the listening, he gave us a study guide. So we could write down the name and every important fact. So
Mm-hmm.
it basically came down to this search puzzle where I remember I still have my study guides actually put away. But at the beginning of each one, I would write down some defining characteristic of what the piece sounded like or
Mm-hmm.
whatever it sounded like, and I would just listen. I would not even have to memorize what it sounded like. I would just, oh, this is what it kind of starts like, boom, and then just copy paste that information.
Right.
So it just became a game of like identify it and how fast can you copy down information
Yeah.
from your study guide. Um, that was one thing I didn't like. Is it kind of defeated the purpose of the test? Like, why why take a test when you could play that example and we could all just talk about the piece for a minute, then play the
Right.
next one. There's zero point in me being tested on something like
Yeah.
this. But
Basically,
uh,
just sitting there regurgitating like what you might have learned in class.
yeah, and it's
Like
funny because like you're not even regurgitating. It's like right in front of you. You don't even have to go
copying down
through.
your notes again.
Yeah, essentially. So that was that was the other thing I didn't like about that class teaching wise. It's just like
Yeah.
what is the point of this? I don't think I retained an ounce of valuable information from that class. Like thinking back on it right now, I can't reliably say I learned this in that class
Yeah.
about this group of people. Like I remember we covered the different types of like Indian tribes and the music and the Native American music that came that they created. And I
Mhm.
remember talking about like the different type of like Native American like drum circles and how each one had a different kind of beat, instrumentation, things like that.
Mhm.
I can't tell you any of them because it
Yeah.
wasn't covered effectively.
Yeah, I don't. You said those things, and I was like, I don't think I learned that in class. And then I like kind of thought. I remember like seeing like a video of people with headdresses and stuff on.
Mhm.
So we must have done it.
Yeah, that's the
Talked
thing.
about
It's
it.
like
I don't remember.
like even in some of the worst classes I've taken, I could tell you one or two facts that I learned in the class.
Mm-hmm.
This is one of those where it's like I have my world music book. It's actually right there. I could pull it out.
Yeah.
I could flip through the pages. I could tell you I don't with confidence. There's nothing off the top of my head I could be like, ah, yes, I
Right.
remember this. This grabbed my attention, which is even in the hardest classes to learn. And I tend to read the book myself and learn something. So
Yeah.
just guessing it was like a bad book mixed with like a bad teaching
I,
experience.
I remember throat singing a lot, and I remember that what tribe is it? I forget. The tribe that lives like in Alaska and around there.
Ooh,
Why can't I
it's
remember?
not Eskimos, right?
I know. I think Eskimo is like the wrong name for it now.
That's the wrong name for it now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, what are they called? It's not
I
Eskimo.
feel like it starts with an A, but I could be wrong.
Either way, they have like a type of throat. Inuit, I think, is what
Inuit,
I was
yes,
thinking. Yeah,
yes.
they have a type of throat singing where they like stand like this close to each other, like that, and
Uh
they're
huh.
just like yelling into each other's mouths,
Uh
or they're
huh.
like breathing into each other's mouths, and it creates like a harmonic
See,
effect.
I like vaguely remember hearing something about this, but I would have never gotten that information off the top of my head. Like maybe it's just you saying it right now that I think
Yeah.
I've heard it, but it's like I feel like I've heard that somewhere.
Let me see. It's called. Um, let me pull it up.
All right.
Inuit throat singing.
Inuit throat singing. Okay.
Yeah. From Canada. Okay. And I'll share computers now.
My name is Karen Kettler, and I'm an Inuit throat singer and drum dancer.
My name is Kathy
Can you hear
Kettler,
it?
and
Yeah, I can hear it.
I'm an Inuit throat singer and drum dancer.
Is that hard enough?
Yeah, that's good.
We are in Anchorage, Alaska. We are
Is that
here
cool?
to perform
That is
at
so
the
awesome.
music festival at the Alaska Native Heritage Center.
Let me see. What Hold on.
Or else you might get lightheaded. Inuit throat singing is a friendly competition between girls. It was something that they would do while the men were out hunting. We do imitations of the sounds that we hear around us, like animals and tools in nature.
It's the
That
same
is so
sound, but
cool.
only a half
Yeah,
second
dude.
off.
Right?
That's okay. That's pretty awesome. See, like this is the stuff that I wish like I remembered or like
Yeah.
wish that we covered to a point where like I would actually like remember, but and I think that's the funny thing. It's like seeing right now is like I'm super interested, so I can't imagine
Yeah.
a way for it to be presented where I would care so little about it. Like you can literally just show me the and I'd be like, dude, I wanted to know more about this. So how is it presented in such a way where I just like don't even remember? What on earth?
Anyway,
Yeah.
so that kind of stuff is like, wow, that's like such a cool musical tradition to have. It's like something where it's just like two people and you're just like making sounds at each other,
Mhm.
and like it creates like meaning. I think that's really like interesting, and whenever we had stuff like that in musicology, like I feel like I'm defending myself, like I don't, because I don't really like, or I didn't like that class so much.
Mhm.
But like I love like ethnomusicology and stuff like that, where it's like just these kind of out of the box ways of thinking about music sometimes that I'm
Mm.
just like, this is awesome.
Yeah, I think, I mean, at the end of the day, those classes, unfortunately, tend to be an afterthought.
Yeah.
So, they're not really taught, at least in the case of Cal State Fullerton, by ethnomusicologists
Mm-hmm.
in the field, working in the field. They
Okay.
might be taught by some people who have interest in or some experience within ethnomusicology. But I've worked with 3 ethnomusicologists at Cal State Long Beach, like working ethnomusicologists,
Mm-hmm.
and it was a completely different experience because the way that everything's presented and like everything is research. Like you're in there and like that's what ethnomusicology is in the
Yeah.
terms of world music, because obviously ethnomusicology is very different than just like, let's say, a generic
Right.
music history class. In terms of the world music history class, it just had to be more focused because essentially what the world music history class was was like that music 182 or whatever. It was a
Yeah.
survey of Western literature. That's what it was.
Yeah.
But there's no following courses that would be like the music of Asia, the music of Latin
Yeah.
America, and it's
Yeah. That would have helped.
yeah, that would have helped because it's like I feel like that could be an easy requirement to add in a sense of just like the same way there's a survey of Western literature, the survey of world history. Then
Yeah.
then you could choose one specific region you want to really study.
Yeah.
Um,
Even
uh,
then, I feel like the way our world music was taught was more general than the survey of Western music was taught.
oh, 100%,
Like,
100%.
it just, they need to figure out, and maybe we cracked it, but they need to figure out like a way to transition from thing to thing and to like really get it to be like we are talking about like
Mhm.
this, like maybe
The,
break it down by continent or like
Yeah, the hard thing
something.
is just like the guidepost. I call them like the
Yeah.
guideposts of music history. So like in Western music history, you start off at the beginning, right? They're always like,
Mhm.
oh, this is how music kind of begun.
Right.
Then you really don't get going until Catholic church music,
Right.
Gregorian chant. That's your first real milestone. Gregorian chant, then you go into things of like Josquin du Pré, later chants, different types of cantuses used. But your first real big milestone, unless you're taking Dr. Baker's class because she loves the chant stuff, but most other places is Baroque period, Bach.
Yeah.
Classical period, Mozart. Romantic period, Beethoven. 20th century is going to be the second Viennese school of music. So I have a brain fart right now. Schoenberg, Berg, and Webern. Uh, and that's kind of your posts. You meet some smaller things in there. So you'll pass Italian opera, you'll pass all these things, but
Mhm.
large chunks were dedicated to those kind of guideposts. When it comes to world music, no one's established the guideposts because how do you choose what was more important in the context of world music?
Right.
Beethoven or Silvestre de Vueltas in Latin America? How do
Right.
you choose who had, or Mendelssohn, I should say, to compare in times? Like, how do you choose who was more influential and who the guidepost is?
Mhm.
Chavez completely changed nationalism and music in Mexico the same way that Wagner was a nationalist composer for Germany during World War II, the same way that Copland established what the American sound was in the United States. Like,
Right.
so it's the difficulty of having such a wide blanket to cast.
Right.
So I can see the difficulty in it, but there has to be a way to eventually incorporate.
Like as we become a more worldly society, I would hope that we would start spending some more academic time, maybe evaluating the impacts of some of these things, and coming to some sort of consensus as educators as to like this is like the most important thing to talk about as far as Latin American music, and then like going from there.
Especially when it comes to music being a part of society, just what music does. I mean, good example is a lot of it's called protest rock in English in Argentina was done in the early to mid 1900s against the dictatorship that was happening there, and it was these kind of underground clubs of rock music inspired by different classical music and things like that. So just things like that are not really talked about.
Yeah.
That or it's just like it's literally music that's defining a nation's society and their like cultural and political climate.
Yeah.
Like that is pretty like darn important. Like Mozart defined a lot of music that followed, but did he define a whole nation's
Right.
outcome kind of thing? So you're definitely right. Whereas we become more worldly society, these things will be brought to light by people from these countries who are like, hey, this is kind of
Yeah.
important to the world as well.
Yeah, but I think it takes also, well, it takes scholars like across the world, and especially like in where we would say Western music is coming from, to like come to like agree that like, you know, we need to be starting to hit these points as far as like other music besides ours is important,
Yeah.
and exposing future musicians to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the more people that are exposed to it, the more that will find interest in it, and hopefully in the future continue the cycle of just
Yeah.
spreading that kind of information.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Josué, do you want to share one of your pieces with us, or do you want to end it, or how
I
are you
mean,
feeling?
it's up to you. I could share one if you want.
I'd like to hear one of your pieces.
All right, for sure. Let me go ahead and open some stuff up here. So what I could go ahead and do is I'll do two things. So I'll kind of show you one that was already completed, so like the full score, and I'll kind of show one that was recently completed, just to kind of show different types of music. But the one that was recently completed kind of shows just a work in progress and stuff like that. So let me pull it up here. There we go. Okay, so I'll just do full screen share.
And then make sure you hit the share audio button.
Yeah. Share computer sound. There we go. Alrighty. So this is, let me switch over here to Finale. Okay. To share your computer, please install the Zoom audio device. It is installed.
Okay.
Let me just make sure. Okay, Finale. Okay, Finale. Okay. All right, this is gonna go through a couple of error codes. There we go.
Okay.
All right, so this is kind of an example of like a recently finished one. This was a string quartet that was written based off of some poems that I had read by Latin American composers, or Latin American poet composers, I guess you could say. And the poem was actually taken from a bunch of different lyrics from these different composers. So I kind of put them all together to make one piece, and the piece is called Poesías. This is just the first movement, which is written for string quartet. So how you were talking about earlier of like how my culture and stuff affected my music writing. I tend to write a lot of my music with expressive text and stuff like that. That just happens to be in Spanish. So at the beginning, tenderly, with more movement, all translated to English. But Spanish being my first language, I tend to think in Spanish when I compose music. So I just thought the best way to describe the way I want my music performed is the way I initially, way I initially think of it.
That's like what's the Australian composer? What's his name?
Australian composer.
Yeah, watch me be wrong about him being Australian. Who's that guy? Band composer. You know his name. Has a lot of isms.
It's not the Kelly. It's
no, much older. Very famous band composer though.
Oh my god. Wait. Okay. Australian. I'm definitely
looking this up. What he says, like things like faster now and like quickening. What's his name?
It wasn't Granger, was it?
Granger.
Okay. Yeah.
It's like Granger. You got musical notations in your own language.
Yeah, exactly. And just the other thing I do a lot is I use colloquial terms, I guess you could call it, to describe the way I want my music played.
Okay.
Because I mean, every musician will know what allegro means because music, but it's not really relevant to us. You know,
Correct.
if I write
Yeah.
allegro, it's like, okay, well, it literally means happy. Do you want me to play it happy? Allegro is also translated kind of to mean like quickly, like in what context? If I write quickly, they'll be like, quickly. Or if I write happy, happy. So a lot of my flavor text is very just emotional, very just translated directly with what I want.
Yeah.
Right here, clarity. Light but intense. I feel like that's a lot more. Well. Oh my goodness. All right, so we might not get the sound, but I could do a different one, and I could send you a link, and you could pull it up there if you want. But yeah, this kind of just shows the string quartet, and this just kind of. Let me actually. I have an idea here. So with that string quartet being there, I do have the recording, not the best recording, but a recording nonetheless. Okay, so what I'm going to do is, let me send you this over Facebook. I think you'll be able to pull it up there. Sorry, I'm not logged into my Zoom account, and I think that's the issue.
Okay.
So it's not installed through there, so let me just pull it up here. Not new. There you are. I swear I'm not like daft when it comes to technology. It makes me feel like I'm that old professor. Yeah. Like every single time this happens, it's just like I'm not this daft. Right. It's just the technical difficulties happen.
Guys, I swear to God, I'm not a boomer. I know what I'm doing.
Exactly. I know what I'm doing. Please don't go around telling
me. It's the program, okay?
Like my students will always do that when I taught like in community college or something, when something went wrong, and they're just like, the boomer doesn't know how to work, and I was like, shut up, all of you, shut up. I am not much older than all of you. How dare you? And if I can't find it, then it's not the worst thing. I'll just pull up the YouTube one and send you that, since it'll be a lot easier.
Okay. See, your screen is frozen on this, so I'm gonna kick your screen sharing off.
Yeah, no worries. There we go. Okay, perfect. So I'm gonna send you this, and bada bing, bada boom. Okay, and that's the link to the audio, and let me go ahead and I'll pull up the PDF so it won't be all laggy like Finale is, since we don't need that anyways.
Okay.
PDF scores. Yes. Okay. There we go. And then I'll just. There we go. Cool.
Okay. So
here's the score.
Share the my screen too. Can we do that at the same time? Side by side. Press. Okay. So if I share at the same time, share computer sound, share.
Cool.
Okay, so I'm gonna hit play.
Alrighty. And it will be MIDI, so for that I apologize.
That's okay.
Is the audio playing on your side?
Yeah, can you not hear it?
Okay, yeah. No, I couldn't hear, so I was just wondering if it was playing at least on your side.
It is playing.
Okay, cool.
I told it to share. Yes. Hopefully, yeah.
But this, while it's playing, I guess I could just explain a little bit of it. It's a lot inspired by Nuevo Tango from Argentina. A lot of the harmonies based off of that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But it's very fluid in terms of just like playing. I took a lot of inspiration both from like Mexican, Argentinian, and just general South American music and tried to combine it with my experience of just like rock and like popular music instead to kind of imitate the idea of poetry and poetry in motion. A lot of it's just wondering when I'm writing, like, not just to convey the idea, but convey the emotion and the feeling behind each word of the poem. But you can just share as much of it as you want, and then the rest of it just continues there. But this is kind of like the full score, so you can kind of see like what a full composition score at the end looks like. It looks obviously like an actual score, but the time-consuming part obviously is going through, and you have to add every single articulation, which is something you don't think about when you see a score. Every single accent, slur, dynamic has to be like hand moved into the exact spot, making sure that all of this lines up. And I think to write this piece took me a total of 3 to 4 days of very intense like work, but to actually engrave it took me a good 2 weeks to finish and find the will and the strength to go through and edit. And then finally, while the music goes on, I'll just include like this part, like every score for when you get one from a composer comes with the program notes. That's what you would include in the program, and the performer notes. So this one is kind of like an explanation for the performer of things that might be relevant to them. So a lot of performance notes are very based. This is like this means this, but I like my performer notes to be much more personal, so that if anybody ever sees this, they know exactly what I was going for without having to talk to me. So like things that I included were just the full title of the piece. It's called Poetries. You Remind Me of a Happy Time. That's the line of the poem that I based this whole piece off of. And different emotions that evokes happiness, sadness to the audience. Performers should play very free. Sections where body is indicated should be exaggerated further. Just little things that can make a performance to the next level. I always include something like this if it is or if it isn't. The piece is highly open to interpretation of the performer, so that they're able to translate their own experiences through performance. Whenever I write music, the music I write, I like to have the performers enjoy it more than anything else. That's my number one job as a composer. In my eyes, everyone sees their own jobs differently, but I want the performers to enjoy playing the piece. Obviously get pushed to become better. That doesn't necessarily mean it has to be the easiest thing in the world, but I do enjoy having them enjoy the piece themselves. And secondly, the audience should enjoy it. So there's some pieces where it's my experience that I'm translating. So very much like you would read any other composer's score, you have to follow the rules strictly. This one's more open to experience and interpretation, so I allow that of the performers. And then whenever I include anything in Spanish, I always include the English translations, so that any performer who doesn't read Spanish is able to easily interpret what I'm saying. And this was actually after various complaints in juries, which I thought were hilarious, from instructors who say, how are performers supposed to understand what you're saying if they're in Spanish? And which I answered, how are performers supposed to understand what Brahms is saying in German, or what Debussy is saying in Italian, or all these other composers saying in different languages? Like, we learn, and why should a composer be limited to using Allegro, Vivace, or, con fuoco, when you could write in English or your own language? And ironically, the language I was writing in when they told me about the complaint was English. So they're just like, what is quickly supposed to mean? And I was just like, quickly, that is what it's supposed to mean.
Yeah, that's ridiculous that they would say that. Like, there's so many composers who are now switching to English only, like, at this point.
Yeah, and it's aside from dynamics, obviously.
Yeah.
But anyways, yeah, that's just kind of like an example there. I'll just include an image of the last one just to kind of show like anybody who's interested in composition of like a master's project would look like. So this is the last thing I'll do. And there it is. So this is my senior master's recital piece. It's called Misa de Sagrada Vida. And it was about my experience growing up with religion as a Mexican American and in Mexico. And the title itself is a play on words. The Misa de Sagrada Vida translates to Mass of Sacred Life. But when you say it fast, desagrada means kind of unfortunate or like unholy. So if you say it Misa de Sagrada Vida, it's Mass of Sacred Life. If you say it Misa de Sagrada Vida, it's almost like my unfortunate or my unholy life kind of
Wow.
thing. So there's a lot of thought that goes into it. This is the program notes for this particular piece. Performance notes are a little bit more extensive. And there's an introduction because it's a staged piece, but right off the bat, it's very much different with a lot of more moving parts. This piece was actually written for a trombone choir with a full spoken choir as well, and the conductor dressed as a priest himself. So, and this is kind of like the full orchestration there, and the full thing I think is like 70 something, 76 pages long.
Wow.
But this is kind of like an example of like what you would have to do for a master's project, and there are a couple more pieces in my recital alongside this one, but just to kind of get an idea of like this is the extensiveness of working for basically 2 years in music and stuff like that. So that's kind of my life as a composer. That's what I do, write a lot of music, spend a lot of time indoors. So but yeah.
Great. It's so good to hear from you and be able to have this conversation. Despite the circumstances and we're all trapped inside. But yeah, it's great. And I hope any of my students that were listening or watching enjoyed that, because I definitely enjoyed listening to, even though it was MIDI, your piece there. And it's great to talk to you.
Yeah, it was a pleasure being here. I was glad to talk to you too. It's been a long time. And talking about a lot of things that are important to us as musicians and us as people, and to share with and your just different experiences and stuff. And I think as educators, the important thing we could do is just share experiences so that other people can learn and grow from that as well.
Yeah. Well, great.